So before we begin, I just want to say Jason has been part of Tesco, I believe, since 1990. Yeah,
Yeah,
got
yeah.
that.
Thanks for reminding me.
And I think Jason has had a very interesting career journey. So Jason, before we go in, could you maybe just talk about yourself, kind of talk about how you got to where you are today, and maybe just talk a bit more about that career journey that I was talking about and things that you've learned from that. I think that'll be a great start.
Yeah, look, just a few minutes on me, and I'll start further back than Tesco because one of the things that I've really realised in life is that you are absolutely a product of where you've come from and your childhood, and I think it plays a bit of a part, well, a big part, a massive part, not just in your career but in your life as well. So. And how you, what you take from that, how it shapes you, what you decide to take from it, and what you decide to leave behind, I think is quite important. So, and talking to Sam, I've got about as different a background as you could imagine. So I was born in Kent, rural Kent, in a village, in a farming community, and into a home. I was the first child of my parents, and they'd lived in Kent all their lives as well. And my dad worked for the council, and my mum did sort of seasonal farming work. And my dad built the house that we lived in with his uncles, and until he died about 7 or 8 years ago, that's where him and my mum lived, and that's where I was brought up. So we were always in the same house, in the same village, in the middle of Kent. And I was the first one ever to go to a grammar school. So first one to stay on school till I was 18, out of anybody in the family. And then I was the first one to go on to further education. I went to a polytechnic, one of the more vocational universities that you see now. So I went to up in Staffordshire, North Staffordshire Polytechnic, now Staffordshire University. And then when I left there, I decided to go travelling for a year. My granny I was very close to, unfortunately died, but she left me £1,000, and I wanted to use it as wisely as I could. And I thought the best thing I could do is buy a round the world ticket and then go travelling and work my way round for a year. And I thought that would be a good thing for me to do, and would give me incredible lifelong memories that I could associate with my granny. So that's what I did. And when I got back, I had a brilliant time. Lots of amazing things happened. And when I got back to the UK, I decided I wanted to emigrate to Australia. So I then made my first big career choice, which was to join Tesco. And 30 years later, here I am. I joined Tesco in order to qualify as an accountant so that I could get a profession, because in order to emigrate back to Australia, that's the only way I could do it. I didn't have any family over there, didn't have any connections, and they were only accepting people into the country that brought a skill or a trade or a profession. And that's why I joined Tesco, joined to train to be an accountant. I did business studies at university. I wasn't particularly good at the accountancy side of things, wasn't that interested in it. I actually failed my maths GCSE the first time I did it. Got it the second time, thought that would be the last time I'd ever use it. But it was a means to an end for me. And then things just changed. So, they do when you're young. You see opportunities in front of you, you see different things move on. And I joined Tesco, and I've stayed because I've been able to do some amazing things. I've done everything from, I did qualify as accountant. I've been involved in lots of things that have changed in the retail marketplace over the years. So when I was growing up, the only fuel stations in the country were from oil companies, Esso, Shell, BP, and then Tesco decided to open some. I got involved in that. Now Tesco's the #1 fuel retailer in the UK. I got involved in our international businesses that we opened up in Central Europe and Asia, and got to go out and work with people from those markets, different cultures, different backgrounds, trying to teach them some of the skills I picked up around retailing and buying particularly. I ended up involved in our clothing business, which is a small part of the Tesco business. And it's, most people don't think of Tesco when I think about clothing. Our brand is F&F, but actually it's the seventh biggest in the UK. It's the fourth biggest in terms of kids wear. And I was able to sort of develop this business, that had a brand across the whole world. So we're in Asia, we're in Central Europe, we're number one in the Czech Republic for clothing, bigger than Zara and H&M. Can you believe it?
Who would know?
So, let alone saying when you see what I wear, you must think, how did he ever end up running a fashion business? And then we had a terrible financial crisis in 2014 where there was a misstatement and an overstatement of profits, and we ended up with a serious fraud office investigation and some financial regulation. A lot of people had to leave the business, were dismissed, and there weren't many left standing. So the new boss came in, and I was one of those left standing. He asked me if I would help him, particularly with sort of changing the way that we work with our suppliers, because we had a bad reputation for it. And it wasn't something that I thought was good anyway. So he asked me to work with him, put me on the executive committee, and then a couple of years ago asked me if I'd run the UK business, and which is an amazing privilege when you start as a business when you're 23 years old and you end up at 53 years old, kind of doing the second biggest job in the Tesco business, and you end up running our biggest part of the organisation. It's both a massive privilege, but also actually a massive responsibility. There are over 300,000 people that work for Tesco. We're the biggest private sector employer in the country. We are the second biggest employer in the country after the government. And as you might imagine, with that amount of people in the organisation, we've got people from all walks of lives, all backgrounds and experiences, and there's a lot of responsibility with that. And then, of course, only about just over a year into it, we end up having to deal with what we thought would be Brexit, and then 18 months on from that, we end up dealing with the pandemic, which is where we are today. So, I mean, that's a whistle-stop tour, and the only thing I'll end on, because I think maybe someone asked me some specific questions around the role, is why did I start where I started in terms of my childhood? It's because I never thought I'd end up where I've ended up. I never had any of the ambitions that I've had, and I think though, because some opportunities presented themselves to me when I was young that were not opportunities that anybody in my family understood. They weren't on their horizons. They never thought that something like that would happen. And to his dying day, my father, every conversation I ever had with him was, "So I'm really worried about you. I don't know how you can deal with what you're doing. It must be really stressful. I don't understand it." But I think the point was, the lesson for me was, if there's an opportunity in front of you, if you haven't got a really good reason not to take it, then take it, because you don't know where it leads you to. And that's why I sort of started there, and that's why I'll end there in terms of this quick summary, if that's okay.
Before I move on, I just wanted to ask, so you spoke about like a lot of roller coasters in terms of challenges and obstacles that came across your journey. In comparison to what you're handling now, the global pandemic, and kind of having to adjust so fast and kind of having to basically kind of keep the country fed during the whole. Do you think you've seen anything like that in comparison to other obstacles that you've had?
I see what you're saying. I've never been through a pandemic before. No, none of us have. And look, we had a plan, right? A big company, like any company actually, but a big company like Tesco, we have business continuity plans, crisis management plans, where we do look at what could go wrong. And if we think it's something that would really disrupt us, we actually go through exercises to try and replicate it. And we did a pandemic one a couple of years ago. But I think it was Mike Tyson that said, wasn't it? He said, everyone's got a plan till I punch them in the face. Or I've got a friend of mine who's a retired army guy. My best friend actually from school ended up in the army, and they say, look, no plan survives first engagement with the enemy. I mean, that's the phrase they use. And actually, whatever you plan for, it's never quite how it turns out. So it has been a massive challenge. if your question is, is it the biggest challenge you've ever faced or you felt personally? I don't think so at all. I think it was much harder when I was younger, when I was your age. I can remember when I started off in finance and I did my exams, and I thought it was hard because I was studying in the evenings and at weekends, going to accountancy school, but then also working, doing a full-time job at the weekend. A bit like you've been doing, Sam, in terms of the thing that you've been doing with Pearson's.
Yeah.
But I didn't get day release, by the way. You had it easy, man. So I was doing that and thought that was hard. And then I decided I wanted to go into buying. So, kind of responsible for some of our products, what we buy, how much we buy them for, what we range, the quality, the price, all that kind of stuff. So I thought that'd be really interesting. And I had a load of friends in it. And I had a lot more in common with the people that I knew who were doing that and the people that I knew that were doing the finance stuff. And I got really lucky and got this job secondment into fuel buying. I went from this position where I was, doing a lot of analysis and providing a lot of management information and support and administration for people, to suddenly being the one that had to make decisions that could have a financial impact, that responsibility of that. And I found
a lot of pressure.
Man, I found it so hard. I found it hard to sleep at night. How old was I? 25, 25, 24, I think 24, 25. Found it really hard to sleep at night. I couldn't really switch off properly. I used to wake up thinking, I'm not sure I can do this, and 2 or 3 times I prepared my CV to leave Tesco to go and do accountancy somewhere else. I thought I need to go back and go back. And I found it so hard. And I didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't think I was good enough. And I don't know what stopped me. I think it's just this thing where you end up sort of thinking, look, I haven't really, if I give up now, then I'll probably find that worse, living with that worse than, not keeping going with it. And I don't know what happened. It just clicked. And I look back and I think people talk about this thing called the comfort zone, don't they? Where, you have this life, you have it set out, you every day you kind of think, well, that's what I'm doing, that's how it is. But you don't really learn, you don't really develop unless you do things that step you outside of that comfort zone. And for me, that was quite an extreme thing at that time in my life. I'm sure people that are listening in now have experienced some things that are a much bigger deal than that. But, you can only ever look at something through the lens that you see rather than, and I always find one of the things I like to try and do is try and always take other people's perspective and bring them in. But that was I found that really incredibly hard. And a few times through my career, I found, that question of, can I do it? Am I good enough? And and you've heard me say this before, Sam, I got to quite a long way in my career, probably 15 to 20 years into my career, before I believed that I belonged in the business doing the job I was. And I was quite senior. I was in the sort of top 100 of the company. But it wasn't until I managed to sort of do some things that I felt could absolutely be down to what I decided to do, how I'd engage with my team, and our kind of execution implementation of that. And I actually felt that gave me a level of confidence and belief in myself that I didn't have before. So, and I think I see a lot of people that are successful in Tesco. And remember, I've only worked for Tesco, who actually, the ones that get on, do have this kind of certain, can I call it paranoia, and a drive that's driven through their either fear of failure or fear of thinking that they might get found out or something. So actually, imposter syndrome. That's what it. Yeah, thanks, Sam. So that's what I found as a real challenge for me. And something like the pandemic, I guess all of the skills and experience I picked up, being able to sort of move through that imposter syndrome into somewhere where I feel like I do belong, where I feel like I have a role to play and I can make a difference. And by the way, having an amazing team of people around me, and we're all in it together. It just felt, people ask me, would I have done anything differently? No, not really. Like to have done things more quickly, but actually, by and large, it's gone pretty well for us. We've been able to look after our colleagues, we've been able to look after our customers, and we've kind of been able to sort of do what we need, try and do to help support vulnerable groups and just try and help do our bit feeding the nation. So it's kind of that I've actually found that ended up being more straightforward. Yeah, that's a very long answer.
No worries.
Quick question.
No worries. In-depth answers is what we need. And I kind of want to speak about, I guess, how it's kind of changed as well now. It's this question, but pre-COVID, what's a day in the life like for, when someone says, when people hear the word, CEO of Tesco UK, like, what does a day in the life in terms of in the office or just in general look like before COVID, and maybe quickly touch on how that's actually changed now?
Yeah, do you know, it hasn't changed that much, but I tell you, it's I don't have lots of things that I really need to come in and do every day. Lots of routine. So, but on a Monday morning, I'd normally go to our office. So right now I live in Islington in North London. I've only been here 3 months. I moved here because of the fantastic, nightlife and an ability to
I'll see you short it, Jason.
mix with some lovely people, and I've been stuck in the house with all the great bars and restaurants closed. But anyway, look, I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, so I live here in Islington now. I lived for 20 years in Hertfordshire, quite close to our offices in Welwyn Garden City. And so on a Monday morning, I'll go to Welwyn Garden City. I still do that now, most of the time, even though there's hardly anybody in the office. It's a really difficult thing for me, because I also spend a lot of time out in stores and our distribution centres. And you kind of say, well, non-essential travel, but I am a key worker, and I have 298,000 of my colleagues out every day in stores serving customers on the front line, I guess. Not quite, or the second front line. The front line, of course, is our amazing NHS and all the people that support them. But I'd say with the second front line, I don't think that's over. I'm sure you'll comment and tell me, you guys, if you think I'm overplaying it. But I do think they're out there. I know, putting themselves.
It is very important role.
Helping feed the nation. And by the way, they're out there. Some of them are a bit nervous, and we kind of look up. If people don't want to come in, that's fine. We understand that, and we support them, right? But actually, most people want to come in and they want to do their bit, and they're very proud to do their bit. And I've seen them grow, physically grow. They feel like, in a way that they're appreciated in a way they haven't been, which is great. So I feel I need to do that too. So on a Monday, I'll come into the office and we go through all of our sort of previous, what's happened over the previous week. So it's sort of very operational, short term. On a Tuesday and Wednesday, I then have a lot of my management meetings. So looking back over the week, looking at our business plans, how we're going forward with that. And also I have every 4 weeks on the Wednesday a long governance meeting, a board meeting for the UK, where we look at all of the aspects of corporate governance, as well as running, as well as the day-to-day sales, retail type things, communication, that sort of thing. But we're looking at, security and safety. We're looking at, audit. We're looking at compliance. We're looking at our corporate responsibilities, make sure we're doing that sort of thing. And on a Thursday, Friday, and one day at the weekend, I try to get out to our stores, our distribution centres around the country, and sometimes our suppliers too.
How many stores does Tesco have again?
Oh yeah, sorry, we've got over 3,600 stores. We've got 800 large stores. You've seen them as extras or superstores. We have 2,700 of our little Tesco Expresses. We also own a brand called One Stop. You don't see many of those in London, so I guess most of you are London-based and you might not know. But One Stop is like a small convenience store, a real neighbourhood store. We've got 600 of those. And then, of course, we've got our online business where we deliver to every postcode. And in the country, and of course that's been something that's really grown over the last wee while. And maybe you might want to hear about that later. But anyway, so we've got all of those, and then also we've got a sister company we merged with 2 or 3 years ago called Booker, which is a cash and carry, but they also own a number of symbols that they allow people to franchise, run their own business, retail business. So if you see a Londis, if you see a Premier,
Okay.
you see a Budgeons, they're all symbols that are owned by Booker, and basically owner entrepreneurs set up a retail business under the Londis banner and buy some, but not all the product. I have lots of flexibility from the Booker team to be able to do that as well. There's another 5,500 of those. So we've got a lot of reach across the whole country in terms of, so I try and get round, a lot of those.
That's a lot.
And,
that's a lot of stores. Have you been to every store?
No, mate.
I'm about to say, you've been doing that all year.
No, and of course, with that many people and that many stores, not everyone recognises me or anything like that. It's quite funny. I kind of walk in and I say, I was the manager about it. I say, yeah. So is there any chance I can talk to him? They go, well, yeah. Who are you? So, my name's Jason. I'm from the office. They go, oh, all right. Yeah. Some guy called Jason from the office is here. So anyway, which I quite like, to be honest. I quite like it because
probably going to go home and cry that night.
They're a bit mortified. I what I try and think to myself is, look, I haven't been around all the stores. I'm not going to get around all the stores. But what I try and think is, look, if I'm only ever going to come to this store and meet these people once in my career as the UK CEO, I want to make it a positive experience. I want to leave them feeling better and more motivated about the business than if they weren't. So that's what I try and do anyway. But
someone in the chat
I'm not sure if it always works. Yeah.
Jasmine in the chat said, it feels like the higher you get in your role, the less practical work you do, and the more make decisions. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah. So you don't. I can't tell you the last time I wrote a paper, a pack, a slide deck. I can't tell you the last time that I did, any sort of administration, loaded stuff on a system, did anything like that. What tends to happen is it's a lot of meetings where people are bringing you proposals or wanting to get feedback about something, or are giving you some insight and information on something new to help you to make a decision. And I do a bit of kind of, how do you end up sort of creating the objective, the ambition, and then asking people to build a plan against that, and then approving that, and then trying to make sure that, you're kind of supporting it, but also checking in to make sure it's happening. So I do an awful lot of that. And the purpose of visiting those stores is, I said I'd like to hopefully make people feel better. It's not my primary reason. My primary reason is to try and really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Because the other thing you realise in a business is the more senior you get, the less you know about what's really going on. Yeah. Because you get further away from the front line, and you get more and more people want to tell you what they think you want to hear, or what they think will impress you, so that you're impressed about them and it helps their career. When actually the best thing they can do is tell you the truth, because that way you can make the better decisions about the business. But it's quite hard. It's just human nature. Sorry, I've got the sun shining. It's just human nature that people want to, kind of tell you what you want to hear and make it a great experience. So yeah. But you're absolutely right. It's far less sort of day-to-day routine, less practical, less operational, more kind of. And I'm looking at. We've got a piece of work we're looking at now, which is to say, what do we think the what the UK will look like in 10 years' time, and then how do you think things will change, and then what does that mean for us, and how do we need to position ourselves to be able to be well placed to carry on delivering our core purpose.
Yeah. In terms of when you heard about the lockdown, I think everyone's interested to really learn what as a leader, what were the changes, and what are the changes that have been made that Tesco had to make as a result of this decision made by the government to basically lock down the whole country, and how did you approach that in terms of changes you made?
So first of all, we knew we were going to be open. So let's think about it. You've got to understand the facts. First thing is understand the facts. What does this lockdown mean in terms of who's open, who's not? Then get very close to what's really happening at the front line. So remember I talked about 3,600 stores. We all went out and we saw what was happening. We used our networks. We got people to talk to us to truly understand. And my biggest regret is that we didn't do that. I felt we were 1 or 2 weeks behind the way this thing was developing at the start. And the biggest single thing I should have done differently is just to go to all the store managers and say, what's happening? What should we do? And then sift all of that into all the common themes that came back. Because if enough people are coming back with the same thing, it's probably the right thing to do. And after about a week, we realized that and moved to that very quickly. But so once the panic buying started, our number one concern was we haven't got enough stock in the stores, products in the stores for people to buy, and people were buying far too much. They need far more than they needed at the time because they were really worried. And we had to try and find a way to get people to buy sensibly. So within a day, we put on restrictions on certain lines.
What was the demand like in terms of
we saw
toilet rolls and stuff?
7 weeks of sales in 2 days. So if I was to tell you that we would normally sell 15 million rolls, not packs, rolls of toilet roll a week, it went up to, the demand went up to 75 million, and we were able to supply 40 million. So there are a lot of people out there with a lot of toilet roll in their houses. So
keeping it safe,
because you don't really use more of that, really. So anyway, but it was just a mentality, So that was the first thing, and then working really closely with our suppliers. What can we do? So I don't know if many of you work in manufacturing, but you've got someone producing 8 pack sizes. We're saying, well, look, people they need a toilet roll. Don't worry about if it's a 4, 9, 12, 24, 30 pack. Let's just put 2 packs out there. 4 pack, low price. 12 pack, bigger family price. So, and that way the production, the manufacturing can run much longer runs of 1 pack, and then they can get more products out and move more through more quickly. Eggs was another one. People have gone mad, home baking mad. We still struggle with eggs, but people in retail buy brown eggs, but actually those are white eggs produced that you end up in restaurants and takeaways, and McDonald's use white eggs. So we said, okay, we'll take white eggs. We think customers will be happy enough to have a white egg rather than no egg. And by the way, they taste the same. There's no difference. So it's just aesthetic. So we did that. And then the next thing, and still the big thing, is safety. Said, how can we make sure our colleagues are safe? And that's why immediately we started putting in place marshalling at the door, extra security. We're really lucky on security because we had suddenly everything was shut down. We got these amazing people on our doors, security. We had people that were, nightclub bouncers. We had people that were training people to do security roles in the Middle East. So they were engaging with their customers at the front end. And then we very quickly, we went to try and get face coverings and gloves and hand sanitizer. We were basically taking the product that was for customers to sell, hand sanitizer, and taking that and giving it to our colleagues first, because we wanted to make sure they were safe first. And that's when and then we ordered the Perspex screens. We put Perspex screens up in 3,600 stores in 3 weeks. We've now got too much. I don't use the word PPE because that's very technical. That's what the health service use. We don't use that grade. We don't want to take it from them, but we take the next best. So face masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. We've got loads of that. We've got the arrows and social distancing stores, extra resource to marshal people through. And safety has been our number one priority. How can we keep our colleagues safe? How can we keep our stores safe? And it was a collective effort because we all knew that was the right thing to do. We needed to do that. And we were having calls that we were making one day, making decisions that day and starting to implement them the very next day. retail's a bit like that anyway, very fast moving. You know, you have to be in order to be able to react to what's going on in front of you. And even today, we're still evolving. You know, we just extended the Perspex screens. We're looking at some automated count things at the start of the store, those stuff. Anyway, so it's basically a big team effort, everyone galvanized, calls morning, noon and night, and making decisions as they arise. There's government advice. We've got someone who sat in listening to what's happening going on in the government. We were engaging with the government departments, and everything was coming out. We're trying to react to it. We've got people that are at the front line telling us what's happening in terms of customers, and we're making decisions on behalf of the whole company on that. We use Zoom. So we would Zoom every day to 3,600 managers. So yeah. It was awesome. But you know what? It's a terrible time, right? You know, every one of us is affected personally in some way, even if it's just the way we change our lives.
Yeah.
But the way everyone came together to be able to do that and step up to it has been truly amazing, and it's been humbling and a privilege to be part of it. And you know, it's terrible. It's just some terrible things happening. But you say, what is our bit? What can we do to do it? And you know, people have really stepped up. It's been incredible, actually. You know, I kind of think to myself, people say, how do you cope with that? And I said, well, it's been really hard, but I'd rather be doing something like this than not really. Yeah. Anyway.
The next question before we move into the Q&A part, obviously it's the title of this event, and looking at, you know, what's happened now and thinking about, you know, as someone in your position as a leader, you know, having insight to things on a large scale, like what do you think are going to be the trends in terms of, you know, the workforce, and what skills do you think young people, you know, who are recent graduates, entrepreneurs, or just, you know, in education now, what skills do you think they need to be thinking about in the future that will be in demand, that will make them in better positions to, you know, enter the workforce and transition?
Yeah. So personally, I think it's less about skills and more about attitude, and outlook and personality. I really think that, and I don't, and I mean that in the broadest sense. But what I mean is, because I've got three nearly grown up children. I've got a son, Patrick, who's 20, and I've always said to him, look, it's like, if you're prepared to take opportunities as they come, you know, see that, and that, I just say, guys, I'm not a big career planner. I never have been. I'm more of a intuitive person rather than a planned person, and so it's my opinion, it's my way. Don't take it as read, but I'm just telling you what I've seen as. I talk about me and how I look at things, but I'll tell you about what I think has been successful in people.
Yeah.
Successful in people generally is, you know, people that are prepared to want to throw themselves into what they're doing. And you can often wonder if you're ever going to get, I mean, I was the toilet roll buyer once, right? My job was to buy toilet rolls. Right? And you say, well, you'd be amazed what you learn. You'd be amazed what you can learn. You could be amazed at what sort of a difference you can make within that supply chain, because it's a livelihood of thousands of people. You know, it's a multi-billion-pound industry. And if you can kind of look for opportunities to make a difference, if you can feel like, I always feel like, more than anything, people want to feel like they're useful and they make a difference. So if you've got the right attitude, and you want to learn and you want to develop, it can be just for that reason. It doesn't have to be about achieving anything. For those two things, I'm pretty sure you'll get anywhere. I mean, in terms of the skills that I see at the moment, I still think learning a trade or getting a professional qualification in some way is an important thing to do. You know, my son's eldest one's studying to be an engineer. My daughter's studying to be a vet. You know, because they it's what they want to do, by the way. Well, no, my daughter wants to be a vet. My son hasn't got a clue, but he said engineering looks useful, so I'll give it a go. And then my youngest one's traveling at the moment. Believe it or not, he's in lockdown in Vietnam. That's another whole story. But he's having
Oh, wow.
he's having a ball. He's having a ball. There's no cases out there. He's tested negative.
Oh, really?
He's really lucky. But anyway, he wants to come back and study biology because he's interested in it. And I'm kind of fine about that. Just, but I do think something, and obviously we hear a lot about tech and we hear a lot about online.
Yeah.
And I think the world will change. And I think you had to be prepared to be adaptable and to, change is getting faster and faster because of the digital revolution. Things that, were, sort of small today can be massive tomorrow. Disruption that's happening in our world at the moment. I'm not talking about a pandemic. I'm talking about industries being disrupted through, this digital era that we're in. Who would have thought? Who would have thought 30 years ago that you'd have seen the top 5 companies in the world in terms of value being Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft? It's absolutely incredible. So, I think if you think Ocado, right? It's a small online business. It's worth more than Sainsbury's, Morrison's, and Asda put together in terms of market capitalization. So no, but it just show the power of tech at the moment. So of course, being in that tech space is important, but actually broader than that, just kind of and don't get disheartened, and don't put yourself under too much pressure. I worry about my kids, and when I talk to Sam sometimes, I've had this conversation. Please don't put yourself under too much pressure. I think you guys your generation is already under so much pressure because of the way that there's so much transparency and visibility around things today through social media and through digitization actually, and expectations. Don't put yourself under any pressure any more than you've already got. Just look at what you learning some skills, developing yourself, having the good outlook, and being prepared to change and adapt, and being prepared to do. And there'll be times when you think, I'm working really hard and I don't really know why. You'll be thinking, I've been doing this job for a while and I'm not getting anywhere. Or you'll be thinking to yourself, I'm a bit disillusioned with all this. I'm not sure whether it's the right thing or not. But, that is life. That is how things are. You don't necessarily have to react to all of that. They're just things that you go through and then things change. I've been promoted 3 times when I thought, that's it, it's not going to happen to me anymore. I'll give up. And I've relaxed. And somehow, something's happened that's meant that in my changing outlook and my changing approach has then resulted in me being promoted, which is a bit odd, really. I felt when I was younger, I was so worried about being found out and imposter syndrome. I needed to keep going on. I just focused so much on that rather than, enjoying the journey. I was so I think it's easy for me to say, isn't it? I've ended up being able to have a great career, and I'm, twice your age more than twice your age. So, it's easy for me to say that, but it's hard when you're there, I know, but I can't say anything other than what I know and what I've seen. But please, there'll be others that have a different view. But that's how I feel about things.
Thank you for sharing that, Jason. That was very touching and very authentic, and I appreciate that you've been able to do that. I think it's important because leaders at your position, being authentic and because I do agree with the aspect about young people feeling the pressure. So it's great to hear someone who's maybe young people might look up to, and just talking about just kind of not just enjoying the journey, enjoying the process. And so guys, follow us at wordofmouth_ and hashtag WOM events. That's WOM events to talk about the event. And we're gonna have a feedback form when you leave. Please fill it out. It'll be very short. But thank you guys. I see all your comments. Thank you so much. I hope you really enjoyed it and it was valuable. And I'll hope to see you guys again, and hopefully in person